Hi, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, or whichever part of the world you are in right now. Welcome to the third episode of Scaling in APAC. I'm very excited and privileged to have you join us today with me and Colin. So for those of you who are here for the first time, Scaling in APAC is a program initiated by both our companies, MediaShock and Scaler. And our goal is really to empower organizations and founders who are keen to grow in APAC. And you will get to learn the real experience from others who have walked the path. So whether you are starting your journey within Southeast Asia and the greater APAC markets, and you're currently based in the US or Europe, and you want to expand your market here, you want to tap into the opportunities of the greater market of APAC, we want to enable you to learn from the experience of other founders, so can you bring forth your innovative ideas and succeed in these diverse markets. Yeah. So Colin, maybe can you tell me a little bit more about what Scaler does?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you said good morning, good evening, I forgot what was the other one.
Good evening. Hey, good afternoon.
Yeah, and good day to those from Australia. I own a consulting firm, so we operate in 6 markets, and our specialization is helping technology companies to scale. And we focus on 3 parts. So recruitment, we're a recruitment agency that focuses on go-to-market. We help companies in doing the actual go-to-market itself, and we also help companies in building the advisory board. So get the right team, know the right strategy, have the right people at the very top, and that's how you make some money. What about yourself, Ming Song? What does MediaShock do?
Right, so MediaShock is a content agency, and we help companies in the tech space especially communicate your complex ideas with effective and engaging message. The more complex, the better. So together we can help your technology achieve the impact and improve the world we all live in. So that's what we do, and especially if you are getting yourself into the APAC market, building that content calendar, building that content impact will help your brand get better known in these new markets, and it makes selling and influencing the market a lot easier.
Cool, so today's topic, and I'm very, very excited for the person that we've got today on the topic, is about building an agile company in uncertain times. So for those of you who haven't been aware, last 4 years have been pretty adventurous, and I suppose in the last 15 years there's been a number of shocks to the world, and I'm going to be asking Ming Song about this, but in the last 15 years we've had the global financial crisis, we've had COVID, we've had the price of salted egg going up. It's been a pretty rough time. I suppose, how do you navigate a company through such uncertain times, particularly the salted egg part?
So funny that you asked, as I was pondering upon it. In fact, when I first started, it was the global financial crisis. And I didn't know it in the thick of things. And back then, when I first started, I wouldn't know what exactly a global financial. I'm born an engineer, or rather I was trained as an engineer. So that didn't matter to me. But what actually, as I recall, what I wanted to do versus what I had to eventually do became quite different, right? Because obviously in a global meltdown in that case, nobody was in the right mind to obviously splurge on marketing efforts, right? They were on in a contraction mode. So we had to pivot even before it started. We had to angle from the perspective that by leveraging on what we can offer and what we can do for you, you can actually save money, right? And that's how we had to change the way we thought. And it didn't come by choice. It is, we had to learn it the hard way. So that's the big thing during the global financial crisis. And as well, and if I could cover a little bit about what we did differently during COVID as well, we had to pivot fairly quickly when the entire world, especially in this country, announced lockdown. We tune our head to really figure if there is a lockdown, what is needed? What does the world need in order to continue having some form of normalcy? And we dug out the rule books and the playbooks and whatever we actually knew, and we did a few things, and we experimented, and we threw our offerings out to the world and tested what worked. And luckily one of those worked, which is exactly what we are doing right now, having webinar series. And we kind of demonstrated our expertise, and that kind of picked off. And that actually transformed our company actually. Yeah, so I think being agile, I am obviously very keen to learn from what Madanjit has done for large enterprises and large corporations. Ours as an agency is comparatively much smaller in size, and we can probably pivot and navigate a lot quicker. We're just like probably a speedboat. Whereas for a large enterprise, you're probably a large yacht or even a cruise liner. It is going to be so much more difficult. So I'm really keen and honored to be learning from Manjit later, what he has done with these few successful companies he has held leadership positions in.
Yep, absolutely. I suppose then, without further ado, we should be introducing our main man, my good friend Madanjit Singh, who is also the chapter head of Pavilion in Singapore. He's on the board of several organizations. He's also one of the nicest human beings that I've ever met. And the joke that I always make is he's one of the best known people in Singapore, that if you're ever stuck in line at a nightclub and the bouncer doesn't let you in, just say that you know Madanjit Singh and straight away. But I'm very much also looking forward to hearing from one of the greatest thinkers that I've ever met on how to actually run an agile enterprise.
I'm here today to be able to talking about building an agile company in uncertain times, right? And these times are really uncertain, right? And I have seen previously, and we all understand it, from whether you are a founder or you are looking to scale up or you're looking for customers, all your paying customers are really tight-fisted, and we all understand that. Hi, my name is Madanjit Singh. I have a lot of experience in building companies, and I'm very interested in talking to you, and thank you very much for Scalar and MediaShock to having me here today. Now let's do a little bit of a deep dive into an agile company. The principle or the word agile has been known for about 20 plus years. It was crafted in times where people said, why do IT projects fail? So it was a strategy. Now that has come in the broader context about how do we actually do our business. Whether you are technology or foodstuff or payment solution, it doesn't really matter. The approach has to be an agile approach. It's a mindset. The mindset is all about thinking, what is the minimum viable solution I need to take out? Not trying to build a rocket ship, but to build a particular component and test it. The second one is an incremental delivery of value. So it's essentially about not trying to say, give me 1 year, I will build it up for you and I will come back and show you what I got, because it's possible after 1 year, times have changed and you don't like what you said you wanted, right? That happens quite frequently, not only in software projects, in somewhere else in the sense. So this whole idea about fail fast, growth mindset, that approach for us to be able to look at incremental value delivered in small bite-sized projects is very important. This is, I believe, in uncertain times, this is what gets attention, and the good news is positive attention, right? So this is something which you may want to think of, and then we will take it forward to be able to essentially to take a little bit more detail about how do you actually build a company. The subject which I have is, what do I have a point of view to share with all of you? First of all of you are very experienced. All of you who are going to be listening to this presentation, they are going to be experienced. So I'm not going to be talking about the commonplace. I'm going to be highlighting or putting the searchlight on a couple of key topics. And I hope those are all right in the sense with each of you. The first one I would like to get started off is what I call as this golden triangle, if I were to use a word. The first one is all about leadership, right? People like the word leadership because it means a lot to them. But for me, leadership is about I. Who am I? And what do I like? What do I bring to the table? And I will spend a little bit of time on that. The second one is about people. And it's the people you work with. people you work along, people who work in your team, your peers, and your superiors, whatever there might be. They could be stakeholders, shareholders, bosses, whoever it might be. So you have to do a 360 on that, the people side. The third one, which is we spend a lot of time on, is actually what I call as business of business, which is all the technical stuff about product, customers, channel partners, pricing, and other such things. So let's get a little bit more in depth on that one, right? The first one is all about I, or what I call as leadership, and I use the word I. So one of the most important thing which determines about who am I for me is what kind of excitement or energy I receive. And I use a lot of time to talk about energy, right? Energy is not really time, it's the energy. It's about the attention or the prioritization you give a particular work, right? And it's very important for you to be able to look at that for yourself. So remember, just to recap, right, we are still talking about leadership from an I point of view, right? One of the most important things is that this concept of inside out, which is you bring your whole self to work. Whether you are playing soccer, or you're doing a deal, or you're negotiating, or you're writing a software code, you bring all of yourself. There is no two Madanjit Singh, there's only one of us. And if I am here, let's try to be here in that sense. So it's very important for us to understand that. And the second point is all about people. And it is perhaps the second most important area of my focus, and areas where I have made a lot of mistakes, but I've got a lot of things right. So when you use the word people, it's essentially people you come together in a team. And one of the common mistakes which I did not make, God help me on that, is I never really hired people who were a lot like me. So the common danger is that you actually hire people like yourselves who essentially think like you, etc. Now, I want to share with you an anecdote. When I first started working as the managing director in Concur and I started hiring, when I used to ask people, what do you think we should do? They would try to guess what I had in mind to be able to give that answer. After some time, when they felt comfortable and they said, oh, okay, Madanjit actually wants to know what I think or he or she thinks, and that things became a little bit more comfortable. So this whole idea about being comfortable and to be able to share openly, obviously respectfully, and not really in a negative manner, not trying to break glass, but to put your point across is very important. Large organizations are either built or broken on the quality of people. Now let's come to the third part, which is what I call as business of business, which is really how does the business actually run? Who are your customers? Who are your partners? Who are your competitors? What are your products? How do you do your pricing? What is your revenue model look like? All of this is a very big topic, and people do an MBA, etc., whatever. I don't think that's important, but to be able to ask the questions when you join a new role or as taking over an existing role is to be asked the question, business of business, as I call it. I'm only going to be focusing on few key topics. The first one is actually this whole idea of time horizon. Now, time horizon means that you have to actually pace what you do. You cannot be in a tearing hurry to do that. There are things important, but there are things urgent, and urgent things take time. Whether it is 6 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years, I don't know. That really depends on what the issues at hand is, but you have to give it time. The second more important point is to be able to build communities. This, I think, is something which we have overlooked, and I had overlooked for a long period of time. In fact, my effort today with MediaShock and Scalar is to be able to do a little bit of personal branding and to be able to bring an authentic myself to my community. Now, those communities could be LinkedIn. It's perhaps one of the most impactful community, right? But you have to use it right. And the second one could be the one which I am part of called Pavilion. It's a community of revenue leaders. You could have other communities. So communities, in my opinion, are understated for the impact they bring. Why? Because communities have the secret message of broadcasting to a larger audience. The other area which I believe is very important, which we all have overlooked, is that a lot of people talk about the SaaS model, software as a service. Everything, whether it is, buying a certain services, buying software, buying whatever it might be. But the more important thing is when customers pay you, they pay you on what is called an annual recurring revenue, also called by the acronym ARR. Now, a lot of people assume that ARR is actually fixed till perpetuity. It's not. If you read any contract, it is actually cancelable on both sides, customer or the vendor, in 1 month. Some people say 2 months, doesn't matter. The point is that it is mutually cancelable. Thereby, the secret which I wanted to tell you is annual recurring revenue is predicated on recurring impact. So I'm talking about this word called impact, which is value. A lot of people call it a value. So the whole idea is you cannot assume that you will be gainfully employed as a contract, ongoing renewal contract by your customers without you doing anything. So this could be a topic for a separate conversation, but please do remember what I just said. Annual recurring revenue is predicated on recurring impact. If you do not make recurring impact, then people will say, look, Madanjit, your solution was very good when we bought it, but now I don't think it is providing any value, so let's part ways as friends. Right? It's a sad way of ending a particular business relationship, but one thing which you can be forewarned is to be able to make that impact. So to recap, the topic at hand was building an agile company in uncertain times. Uncertain times are very important because they kind of cut the fluff out and make you realize that sustainable, predictable growth is where you're going to be going into. The second part is building, right? This is essentially what I said about building teams, building businesses, etc. And the third one is agile as a company. Agile company is essentially this whole principle which I just spoke about. I hope you get a smattering of what I'm saying. If you are interested in any of this, do contact me. I'll be more than happy to be able to pick up some of your feedback. And I also wanted to thank both Scalar and MediaShock for giving me this particular opportunity. Thank you very much, and I will be in touch with you soon.
I'm really excited to be doing this because not only do I think Madanjit is honestly one of the nicest people that I've ever met, you have also one of the most fascinating backgrounds in that you're a marketeer that became a multiple-time MD of APAC that's had a phenomenal success record in enterprise selling and building executive sales teams, who now runs the Pavilion chapter of Singapore. And what you're doing now, you're a board director and you're also teaching companies how to be more agile. Fascinating.
Thank you.
Madanjit, tell us a little bit about your career.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to meet you again in the sense because every time I meet you, I kind of pick up some stuff, which is always something which I believe I won't maybe have a safe zone to get out. So thank you very much for that. And this time we're also meeting the team from MediaShock, which is really cool. Now, what you really asked me was very interesting is that, I came from India, I was born there, then I came to Singapore, and as the opportunities presented themselves to me, I kind of learned. And that learning actually came from wide variety of sources. I would admit that I'm not particularly very bright, but one of the things which is very important is that I listen intently. We listen to customers, we listen to prospects, we listen to competitors, we listen to our teams, and each of them have a view, a lot of examples on this one to be able to substantiate it as to how I picked up some of this stuff. Let me give you one of them, right? I used to work for a company called Concur, and Concur had this kind of pet project called the perfect trip. It was like their mantra, right? The perfect trip. Everything has to come in. The first time I saw the perfect trip presentation, and I said, this is not going to work here because they are using North America context. So anybody who looks at it will say, really? You must be kidding me, kind of stuff. To cut the long story short, I told my team, I said, look, let us all do a video in which all of you are invited as actors, and we'll call it the perfect trip in Singapore. So we had my colleagues from marketing, my colleagues from customer success, my colleagues from sales, all as actors, and they were all dressed up in their fine, and we did a little makeup and all that. We had a blast. But till today, I think that particular perfect trip video still sits on YouTube somewhere, at least on my LinkedIn. So it didn't cost us very little, but we were able to make a lot of impact because people got it. Oh, that's how you take a Grab. That's how you link it to Singapore Airlines. That's how you go somewhere else and you do Gojek, right? Etc. etc. So it worked, right? And it proves the point that if you listen to people and you apply what you're learning in an open mind, it gets you somewhere.
I think many of the people in the audience will be familiar. Concur is a very, very successful SaaS company. It's multi-time unicorn. It was one of SAP's biggest acquisitions, and I believe that you were MD of Southeast Asia.
Yes.
And you worked your way up as well.
Yes, I did.
There's a few questions which I wanted to ask. Why is go-to-market in Asia Pacific just different to anywhere else in the world? Like, why is it so different to, let's say, North America?
Okay, so great question in this sense, right? So North American market is one large continent, one currency, couple of credit cards, just from a Concur point of view, but largely it is homogeneous, right? Whereas Asia is really fragmented, right? In the sense. So if you go all the way from Japan to Singapore, New Zealand to India, right? It's fragmented. The markets have potential, but you cannot put it together and say this is Asia Pacific. That's the first one. The second one is the customer are more technically solid than in America and in Europe. So I'm not trying to say that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the Asian customer is much more technically astute, right?
Very interesting.
Right. The third point is that they are more tight-fisted on where they want to spend. So it's more around. So right. I'm not even come to the negotiation. That's also another important point. But if you just run through this point, the whole idea is a market has a particular culture, let's call it that word called business culture, in which you permeate on. I must also caution you that I have done Teradata, I've done Concur, I've done a couple of them, others, and now Scaled Agile. All American companies, before they come to Asia, are very successful. That's why they've come here. So with success comes with a little bit of pride that they are doing things right. So one of the most important thing is to be able to build those bridges with your stakeholders, shareholders, seniors, so that you don't come in as a new guy trying to tell them things about it, right? Nobody will like that. I will not like it. So do it in a nice manner. Build a bridge of relationship, and then say, would you be open to considering like this? So one has to do it in a nice manner, invest time and effort, go over to, I've been many times over to Seattle, Bellevue, had lousy coffees, multiple of them at Starbucks, yes. But build bridges.
The coffees are absolutely terrible,
that's right,
and so I also struggle trying to explain the order that I want. That
that's right.
I don't want sugar, I don't want sweetener. That it is what it is. Concur for me was actually one of the most successful North American expansions into APAC. The reason why I say that is Concur had expanded into pretty much all of the major cities in APAC and built quite substantial teams. Like I think Concur was like 100 people in Australia alone. What made it such a successful sales engine in APAC?
Okay, I cannot run away without giving success to my team, right? It's never I, it's always we. So essentially getting the right people in, hiring, was very important. And did I make mistakes in hiring? Yes, I did. But I made more rights than wrongs, so that's why we got somewhere in this sense. So that's very important. Then we also listened to people who were advisors or well-wishers, right? The kind of stuff, Colin, which you do, which is, go-to-market or recruitment or board advisory, very, very important, right? In those years, it was not very well developed, but now I think it is, right? But it's very important for us to look at what we call as non-traditional advisors, whether they are board advisors, go-to-market advisors, recruitment consultants. Everybody has a point of view and we must be humble to be able to do that. Very important. That's the first one. The second one is actually worked with the partner community, and all of Concur partners were actually bigger companies than them, right? American Express, right? Or for that matter, Singapore Airlines or whatever, they were much better. So this whole idea about you come to my office, like psychologically is not good. I will come and meet you, right? So it kind of shows outreach, humility. It also puts a kind of an emotional kind of out there to say that you are invested in this joint business. So hiring people, building up partners, channel alliances of all sizes and shapes, even people who don't buy for you, but they essentially give you good advice. Think about, Colin, like yourselves, right? Suppose you're not going to be buying Concur for your company, but you still say, hey, do you know so-and-so? Have you met so-and-so? So that really has value in it, in the sense.
Can I just drill down a little bit more on that? Why was Concur so successful with business development? Because a lot of companies just get this wrong. Like a lot of companies just don't know, how do we do BD in APAC? How do we do completely net new? Do we need to bring in an SDR? How do we close mid-market size deals, enterprise size deals? Whereas Concur, it seemed like just an engine in terms of like leads. Like what made it such a successful growth engine?
Right. We took a lot of time to get it right. Right? And it was really hard. We had a lot of dead ends in it, to be honest with you, till we actually got it into some form or shape. And let me tell you what that little secret was. The secret was a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet had like 50 names, right? Yeah. So it's hard yards, right? It's the sales 101. So it's 50 names. Let's make it up. 50 names of companies which are large enough for you to be able to talk, that you should be talking to them from Concur, right? It could be banks, could be telcos, could be government, could be energy, aviation, doesn't matter. But typically greater than 2 billion market, right? More than 5,000 people. So obviously people have to travel around, right? Regional operations. So it doesn't matter what the company is, the names are pretty obvious. To be honest with you, what I looked at was Singapore Stock Exchange 1 to 100. I just copied it up. Literally, right? Just copied it up, right? Then came the little magic. Then I said, who are the personas we want to talk to? The chief digital officer, do they have a travel program manager, etc. Then we said, who are the people who have an influence? They don't know us. They don't know Madanjit. They don't know Concur. Who are the people? So who's their SI? Who's their SI, system integrator? Who's their travel management company? Who is their credit card company? The moment we started putting those blocks in, then we said, oh, I think we should be talking to Accenture. Accenture has a route to, say, ST Engineering, which is true, right? True names, etc., right? Then we worked along with that. So this formulae took a while for us to get it right. So those are the people which I want to evangelize. That's the second portion. Evangelize, don't sell the story, tell the story. So right, a lot of people say, Sir Madanjit, what are you? Are you a travel company? Are you a travel agent? I said, no, we are a travel management company with a solution. So slowly that started ringing in their head, in the sense, right? But it took a long while, Colin, and I wish I was bright enough to do it faster, but I was not. Right,
I'll say why I love that. For me, that was a masterclass in spin selling.
Right.
That's what you just described. For the audience which might not be familiar, because I think MEDDIC is now the most popular sales methodology, spin selling was the one which was probably, there's a lot of parallels. Enter a new market. Take the list of the Singaporean Stock Exchange, top 200. From that, who are the stakeholders that we need to be targeting? Do we sell to CFOs? Do we sell to heads of digital? Or the stakeholders that we need to have a relationship with? Like, be prepared to go out there and go meet with the customers, so you start anchoring an internal champion. At the same time, who are the other companies who sell to the same customer base, completely complementary angle? Who are the other suppliers to that business that we can start building a relationship with? So then you made Concur successful. But that's not the only company that you've made successful, because there's a number of businesses, again, international tech businesses come into APAC, and you've been able to 5x their revenue, 6x their revenue within the space of about 3 years, from one salesperson to another. Yeah. I'd love to hear the war stories. Well, what would you say were some of the biggest success stories?
Right. I think the biggest success stories was essentially making sure that you built a community. Now, this is an interesting one. A community of like-minded professionals who may not buy a product, but they essentially get it, right? And I coined the word that they are friends of a company, right? So friends of Concur or friends of Scaled Agile in my current employment. So that is very important. Consider yourself or people in Media Shock or anybody else in the audience to be friends. You don't have to buy anything, but you have to say, okay, I get what you are talking about, and maybe you spoken to so-and-so, right? So that community is, I believe, something I wish I had known earlier, right? So we are very strong in community. I'm also privileged to be part of Pavilion as a community of revenue leaders, which I am very happy that you are along with me in the sense.
I'm very happy you're the chapter head, which we'll get onto.
That's right. So Colin, one of the things which I have realized, and I'm very happy that you are an active member of Pavilion, is the power of communities.
Yeah.
Right? So people have known LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is a little bit virtual. People now, especially post-COVID, want to do in person, right? So Pavilion is one good example of it, which I have the privilege of being participant for the last couple of years and have the opportunity to lead it, Pavilion Singapore. We have about 105 execs there. One important element while we talk about Pavilion, and I heard you smile about that, is the whole idea about not monetizing the community, but evangelizing. Add value, not trying to sell them something. That's a very Asian view of what do I get out of it? Well, my friend, what do you put into it, right? So
the amount of times that I've had this conversation with people and try to explain this, I strongly agree. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. No, I would like you, because you do this. Scalar does that both from a recruitment point of view, a go-to-market, as well as board advisory. And I'm sure all of this is underpinned by your operating style. So if I may be the one asking the questions, right, this time around, right? Yeah. So how do you do it, Colin? How do you scale it up in Scalar? What's the story there?
So, you know what, it's funny because you can basically pose the same question back to me. How did I actually launch Scalar in Singapore? What you spoke about before in terms of, there's two areas where I strongly agree. When you enter a new market, you need to identify who are the businesses that you want to try and sell to. In those businesses, you want to have a relationship with an internal champion. But you also want to understand who are the other companies who sell to the exact same target customer base from a completely complementary angle, where you can also have a relationship with them. Now, the key thing is, and this is where so many people get it wrong, it's not a transactional relationship. It's not about what are you going to give me in return. It's basically add value to people and you will get the value back. The more value that you add, the more that you will get back, especially if you're entering a new region. So how I ended up in Pavilion is I was out with several guys which were also a part of Pavilion, and they mentioned that I should join the Pavilion Executive Leaders component. For those who are unfamiliar, so I'd say Pavilion is equivalent to an EO or to a YPO, but you need to be an executive leader of a technology business to qualify. So it's basically the highest concentration of the MDs of APAC, the C-suite of the various technology companies, and it's all ran by our cult leader, Madanjit Singh. And I joined Pavilion. My take was exactly as what you had just described. And that is, I'm new in a new country. Yes, I had some existing networks coming here, but I am still relatively new in Singapore. So how do I build my own network and ecosystem and get to the decision makers that ultimately we would be targeting? Well, you want to be involved within that ecosystem. But the trick is, it's don't be involved as a part of that ecosystem and ask for something in return. Be involved as a part of the ecosystem and genuinely add value to it. Because when you do it, you will build a strong enough of a brand name and of a brand presence that you're going to start seeing business as a result of it. Pavilion is huge globally, but it's still relatively nascent. How did you launch a global organization, a global not-for-profit member organization from scratch and got it to what it is? That's the kind of stuff that I find resonates really, really strongly with the ecosystem. In fact, if I could actually just ask one more question tied back to Pavilion.
Yes.
So you're now teaching at Pavilion University, and you're teaching around how to be a CRO or a Chief Commercial Officer. I'm also really curious, like, what is the content? I know a lot of great salespeople that are terrible sales managers, like me. It's a very, very different skill set. And then you become a manager of sales managers, and then you become a chief commercial officer or chief revenue officer. Now for that, I actually don't know what it is that a person would need to learn. What do you teach at Pavilion University about being a CRO? Like, why is it so different to being a sales leader?
Right. Okay. Great. So the point is that the Pavilion Chief Revenue Officer School is built around a couple of pillars, so let's call it boxes of knowledge. Right. The first one is all about personal value and culture building, which is akin to branding. Takes it a little bit more about who you are, what is important to you, why you're doing it, what energizes you, etc. So that's an important part of that. The second part is essentially around building teams, right? Which, and we have spoken about. The teams are not only people you hire, it's people, your peers, which you kind of work with, and also the people who are your seniors. So that's what I call as a 360, right? A lot of people make the mistake of over-investing in their bosses and under-investing in their peers, or vice versa. None of those are the right approach. You have to do all three. So it's kind of a little bit like a triathlon of sorts. You can't say I'm good in cycling but not in swimming and running. That doesn't count very much. Then the third thing is essentially to be able to understand the guts of the business. So the pricing strategy, the revenue model, what do you sell, etc. is very important, right? You don't have to get into the details about the sales development resources and what is their KPIs, but you have to understand how those pieces of the puzzle fit together. And that's very important for you. One of the things which can help you, if you do, obviously you should do the CRO school, is to be able to have an advisor of sorts. So if you're a founder listening to me, or you are a scaling up company, maybe look out for Colin and ask for a board advisor or an advisory board to be able to help you. That's something really works, very important, because they can actually reduce the learning curve, right? If the learning curve would be in quarters and months or years, they can bring it down because they can say focus on that. And think about it like a performance coach of sorts. Does that help?
No, I completely agree. I obviously agree because it's what I sell. Surprise. Yeah. I'll tell you something which I personally find really interesting. The difference that I've seen from companies which are early stage to companies which are now late stage, early stage businesses haven't really thought about pricing strategy. It's basically, yeah, it's $39 a month. Whereas pricing is different if you're SMB, mid-market, enterprise. Pricing is different if you're in Singapore to Australia to Indonesia. Every single time it actually changes. And what I didn't realize is that Pavilion is the place that essentially teaches, it's almost like an MBA to be honest, but specifically for enterprise sales.
So thanks for that. I think one of the areas which you focused on was absolutely brilliant. And in times of today, which is uncertain times where capital is constrained, etc., it's basically profitability. Yeah. right? People do not spend enough time worrying around pricing. Let's call it pricing. So pricing minus costs, whether direct or indirect, is profitability. So if you diminish the value by giving a discount, then the customers are going to remember to you, and you can never bring it up, the price back. Yeah. So you will be pressed down further on. So it's very important to be able to hold the price. It's hard. It's hard for me also as a salesperson, because you got everything right. The customer's gone from tell me more to I want to buy. And then this whole idea is essentially around that, hey, what price are we going to be able to sell? So this idea about pricing or pricing for profitability is very important. If you throw away the price advantage, that deal is going to be not be worth your while after you paid all the costs. Right? So,
yeah. You know, this is something else that I find interesting when companies come into Asia Pacific, because you'll get an American business enter APAC, and they'll keep their pricing strategy essentially the same. So in a market like Indonesia, they're not going to sell a thing. But then I see companies do the opposite, where they're like, okay, we really need to bring down the price. But then you bring it down so much that it's pretty much just not even worth the time and effort. What is your recommendation? I mean, you've grown revenues multiple times in Asia Pacific. Like, how does a successful chief commercial officer determine the pricing strategy for various markets in APAC? How do you test that? How do you determine that?
Right. This is a really hard topic. So you essentially can have a US reference price, which you kind of configure to the local market conditions, or you can actually have a higher price which you're saying, well, I'm going to give you discount. So the whole idea is you want to discount or not discount, right? So the point is that you can move the price discounts to essentially services which are of value, which are incremental to you building out, right? So the name of the game is actually not landing the contract, but to land and expand, right? So, yes. Right. So if you don't expand, that deal is not profitable, because you paid commissions, you paid marketing, you paid affiliates, you paid everybody else. So net, that is not worth very much. But if you're able to land and say, well, we're going to be increasing this to 50% in 12 months or to 100% in 2 years, that's something which you're willing to invest my time and effort as a MD to say, okay, here is a story. Somebody is writing out how you're going to be landing and expanding, right? Not some template. Somebody is actually putting some real action and say, these are the 3 things or 4 things I'm going to be doing.
I have not thought about that. The 2 most dominant selling styles is land and expand and rip and replace. Rip and replace, typically much longer sales cycles. Land and expand is also like shorter sales cycles. But land and expand is shorter sales cycles. I remember when I was speaking with UiPath, and they basically said, we just need to sell them 1 robot. We can even give away the robot, because once we're in, we're in. Right. Because then we can come in and we can upsell it. I hadn't thought of it that way, because you can actually significantly reduce the price, because if you can get in there, if you can get someone trialing it, if you can add value to them through customer success, and now they've got the genuine interest in it, and you build enough of a relationship with that internal buyer, and you've got the external partners as well that are coming in, well, now that gives the opportunity to be significantly able to upsell and scale that account. I completely forgot about that.
Right, no problem at all. I think we should be wrapping up soon. This is, we can go on for a while, but but in the interest of time, look, I really enjoyed having this conversation with you, Colin, and good that you're back here into warmer climates from cold Melbourne, right? Yeah, that's right. And look forward to catching up with you for a cup of coffee otherwise, because there's a lot of other stuff which we want to talk about.
And join Pavilion. So join Pavilion, get involved in the Pavilion ecosystem. Again, you've got the cult leader of Singapore sitting right beside me.
I like that kind
of thing. There's several major Pavilion events. The global events are also fantastic. So, Mr. Madanjit Singh,
thank you very much. Yeah, it's a pleasure. Yes.
Wow, that was such an interesting session you had with Madanjit. And I learned a few things from him. I mean, he obviously has a lot of valuable insights that he gave, but a few important things that I took away from that he was very, very intentional to hire people not exactly like him. I think it takes some guts, knowledge, and very specific intention. We are naturally drawn to people who are like us, but he knows that in order for his organization to grow, he needs to hire people who are not like him. Yeah, and so that he is able to make it a very, very safe zone, and people are able and willing to trust him and put their own points across without being judged. And one important thing I took away from is also his spreadsheet game, right? Listing his ideal customers on that spreadsheet, or figuring out the folks on the stock exchange who are more than $1 billion. Is that what I heard?
I quite like that as well.
And hustling to meet them, right? So he's back to hustling mode, right? Yeah. Even as such a huge organization where he's leading the APAC growth, he still hustles that hard. And one big reminder that I took away from is also, even if that organization, if an organization is successful in the North America, it may not always work well in a new territory like APAC. And respect the partners you work with, and trust them, and empower them, and they will help you become successful as well.
Are you trying to tell me that Asia Pacific and North America are different?
What do you think?
Yes, can.
And the last point obviously has so many good points, but the last point that is so crucial is evangelize and about sharing the story and not necessarily having to sell the room, right? Selling takes a huge time, and meet people even if they are not the target people who will buy your products or services, and network your influence, right? So I love the way he sells his story, and wow, that guy is a legend.
Look, I absolutely love the guy. I love the guy as well. I honestly think he's one of the nicest people that I've ever met. He's the king of spreadsheets, man. Like Madanjit Singh, MS, Microsoft. There's been the time Microsoft Excel has been there since he was born. No, it's extremely interesting. I agree with what he was saying as well. In terms of evangelization sells. Like there's one thing which is trying to sell. There's the other thing which is basically bringing up case studies or evangelizing. But I really love the fact of new territory, how do we do it? Right, let's document and map out all of the key customers that we're going to go for on a spreadsheet, and then we start tracking against that. It's old school, but I love it. Like, I know that like in today's world, people have got such an over-reliance upon things like ChatGPT. I actually find that ChatGPT has made old school sale techniques more effective and more in demand. There's less people that are prepared to do it as opposed to asking AI to do it. So look, I loved it. And I guess for me, the part that really resonates is on communities. So we're both part of the same cult/community, which is entrepreneur organization. And my thoughts in general on communities are, it's amazing as a way, you're a new company trying to enter a new region, to develop business, to get your brand name out there. It's a really good way to meet a support ecosystem. It's a good way to be able to learn from other people and I guess hear how they've done it. And I guess just even speaking from my own experience, so we're both part of entrepreneur organization. You had joined this year, whereas I had transferred from EO Melbourne. So I also had the added benefit of being new in a new country and then developing a community from the EO community. I'm part of Pavilion, which I've also found is brilliant in terms of, hey, I'm in a new country, how do I get networked with most of the senior leaders of the technology companies? Join a community. And I've had similar type of advice, like whether it's even sporting, like cycling, golfing, I know is quite big here. Speaking of cults, CrossFit is another one. That it's just a really good way to build out your personal network, whether you're new launching in a new region or looking to better develop yourself. Like that's essentially what my thoughts have been on leveraging communities and support. Beyond that, actually, before we even get to the Q&A, given that you're also part of the same cult that I am, what are your thoughts on communities in general?
I think a community, I'll be a little bit negative, is a brilliant support system, especially if the stakes are down. And especially if the stakes are down, you want people who have walked the path somewhat who can support you and help you push and find your next breakthrough. And it is never a bed of roses, especially if one is coming into a new market. You're uprooting your family, you're uprooting your own network in your own country and coming to a new place where you're basically an unknown, and getting into a community that you somehow have some roots with massively helps, right? Massively helps. And it's just a form of emotional support system as well. So that's what I think a community is massively useful for. Obviously, if you're good and you're on the roll, that helps itself. But I want to kind of bring the other side of the coin, that when you feel miserable, a great community actually lifts you up and gets you up faster than if you would be on your own. That you wallow in pity all on your own.
Yeah, I always joke that entrepreneur organization kind of feels like Alcoholics Anonymous, but for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, kind of, if you think about it. Exactly.
Pretend we never said that. But outside of that, for those who are tuning in right now, we'd love for you to leave some of your comments and questions. So please click on the Q&A button and we're going to be addressing them in the next section. So to kick things off, we've got a question from Joey. Does being an agile company have more to do with the company's culture or its internal processes? Let's both answer that.
Okay. I think it has to do more with the culture first and foremost. And culture breeds processes. I think being agile is a mindset. I think you or Madanjit probably also mentioned that, but I really think culture is a mindset. Or rather, being agile is a mindset, whether you want to be agile or you choose not to be agile. And if we choose to be agile, processes will evolve and adapt to it. That's my quick answer. What about yours?
I think for me, it's a mixture of both. If you're an organization and if you can envisage what the end goal looks like, and then you try to reverse engineer what is it that you need to do to get there, you need to be agile with both your culture and with your internal processes, because what your company looks like today is very different to what your company is going to look like. And that's something which people need to recognize. Like if you're a 30-person business trying to get to a 120-person business, it's going to change. Like everything is going to need to evolve in your organization. That's just the reality of a growing and scaling company. If you take something like DBS Bank or UOB or Singapore Airlines, when they first started, they were a completely different beast to what it is that they are now. So for me, it's just a part of the evolutionary journey. Next question.
Yeah, so next question comes from Aiden. Aiden is asking, if I'm new to a country and I do not know anybody, how do I get started on finding a community? I'll throw that to you because you have the perfect answer for this.
Yes. Actually, for those that don't know, I'm actually 2 times new to a country. But speaking of, I guess with Singapore, how do I get started on finding a community? There's the personal angle and there's the business angle. On the personal angle, first of all, Facebook is actually quite helpful. And I look at my wife's experience and she actually met quite a few friends from some of the groups there. But the other one is, if you're new to a country, well, take whatever your hobbies are. So whether it's cycling, crossfitting, etc., then there's going to be other communities there that all of you already have a shared type of common interest, that it's a relatively easy way to actually go and meet friends. But when it comes to the business angle, and I guess I also speak about this from experience, it's who do we sell to? Or who do we sell to? Who are the stakeholders that we work with? How do I meet as many of those stakeholders as quickly as possible? Chances are a significant amount of them are within a particular community. So what is that community that I need to be a part of? Once you identify it, join that community. And my biggest piece of advice is don't go in there with the intention of trying to sell. Go in there with the intention of networking, but most of all, go in there with the intention of adding value to the ecosystem and the community. So it's similar to what I did when I'd moved here. I transferred across from EO Melbourne to EO Singapore, but Pavilion is something that I chose to join. And the best way of being able to develop that is, honestly, don't look at it as a tool of business. Look at it as a tool of how can I actually give back to this community, because if you do, the business part is naturally going to come anyway. So that's my biggest advice. Join it when you're going to a new country. Personal-wise, hobbies, Facebook, things such as that. Business-wise, have a look at where the stakeholders you're selling to, what community they're a part of, join that community, then add as much value to that community as humanly possible.
Yeah.
Next question is from Avinash. So when it comes to pricing, what are some of the local factors to consider when expanding to any particular market?
Wow.
Do you want to go first?
This is tough. Especially if you are getting into APAC, where APAC is a market with such diverse state of economy, spending power, and stuff like that. I think we all have to be very sensitive to what each market can take, so that you can remain competitive while delivering lots of value. So it is a natural move that you have to be localized.
Yeah.
So I think the other word that I often use is localize, be global, but yet local at the same time, right? You can have a global campaign, but you need to be very sensitive to what each local market can take in terms of pricing as well. So that's my quick sense of what.
Yeah, let me give you a couple of examples. So you need to change your pricing depending on what market you're in. So as an example, here's a couple of factors to consider. So the first one is the actual GDP of the country. So the GDP of Singapore is substantially higher than per capita GDP of something like in Indonesia. So you can't expect to charge the same price as what you would in Singapore to Indonesia. So one of the things to consider is the GDP. The other one to look at is how much do people within that country typically spend on tech. This does tie into GDP, but typically the countries that have got the highest GDPs are also the ones that spend the highest amounts and the largest amounts of technological innovation. So as an example, in Asia Pacific, the highest GDP markets, Australia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, meaning that the pricing strategy is going to be higher than if you were to look at something like an emerging market. And the other one that I would mention is pricing strategy also comes down to the way in which sales is actually run in that country. So something like Australia is direct sales, whereas if you're going into Indonesia, Indonesia is very heavily partner-led, meaning that you need to tailor your pricing, but you also need to factor into account a margin that you're going to be giving to your partner. And even if you were to take the example of two high GDP countries, Singapore and Hong Kong, for many outsiders, people see quite a lot of parallels between Singapore and Hong Kong, and there most certainly are. But one of the differences is actually pricing, because Singapore is also very direct selling, whereas Hong Kong is very, very heavily channel driven. So Hong Kong is very much seen as the gateway market to then mainland China. Singapore is also seen as a gateway market to Southeast Asia. But the style of selling here direct, meaning that you would typically cost up more, whereas the style of selling in Hong Kong, because it's very partner led, you need to change it up and basically factor into account that your partner is going to be getting a cut. So I'd say the biggest ones to consider is price sensitivity of the market. If it's more price sensitive, just get ready to negotiate or reduce the cost. If it's lower GDP, cost will typically be less. If it's something which is very value-based, so such as like an America or a London, this may shock some of you, but you can honestly charge whatever you're charging in Singapore, multiply that by 3, and that is what you should be charging people in London or in New York, because they associate a higher cost with higher value. Yeah?
Brilliant. And looks like we have one more question from Gui Feng. What would a pricing strategy for a land and expand type of move look like?
Yeah, let me take this one away. So you can look at a couple of companies which have successfully implemented the land and expand strategy. So ultimately, for those who aren't aware, so there's two predominant types of selling. So there's rip and replace, and then there's land and expand. So rip and replace, it's when it's a very, very large complex system and you're basically taking out another system. Like if you were pretty much to replace Amazon Web Services and put in place Google Cloud. Land and expand is, let's just go sell them one license, get them hooked, get them to get the value from one license, and then we can grow it. And there's a large number of very, very famous companies which use land and expand, like UiPath is brilliant at doing it, Twilio is brilliant at doing it. So in terms of pricing strategy, so what you need to consider is that the land part, the pricing strategy is actually not that important because you're not trying to make a profit on that first unit. You're basically trying to use that first unit as a way of getting through the door. So I've seen a variety of these strategies. The first unit can be free. Honestly, it could be free as a way of just getting them to use it and getting them to trial it, because now that you're in there, you can start nurturing, you can build that relationship. Something else that you can do is have a lower pricing strategy for, let's say, the first 5 licenses, but you also don't give your customer access to all of the full features. So you can have something like $20 per month per user, and you can do that for, let's just say, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, but if you want to get access to the full range of features, well, then you need to upgrade to this plan, which is $80 per user per license. So ultimately, the 2 most common land and expand pricing strategies that I've seen is the first unit can basically be free, and that can be for a trial period, in which case you get your customer success team to come in to get them really, really hooked on it. And then it starts getting converted over onto a paid strategy. The second one is you can have tiers, so low cost, medium cost, high cost. Now most people are going to take this one. So something you can do is say, you can either buy 10 licenses from us at $199 per license per month, or if you sign up for an entire year, you get a 20% discount, or if you sign up for 2 years, you get a 30% discount. Or you can do something like, we can give you the base level package for 5 licenses. They get hooked. Naturally, people are going to be falling onto the second one, but if they're already using it, it's easy to then convert it. So you start low, you don't give access to the full features, they then upgrade themselves, or then they move on to the next one. So that's typically what I see with the land and expand pricing strategies.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for sharing. Let's see whether there are additional questions. That seems to be the rest of the questions. So, yeah, this is our 3rd episode. How are you feeling right now?
Both of us just came back from Taiwan, and both of us got struck down on food poisoning. But feeling much better.
Right.
Still a little bit tired, but doing our best.
Yeah, but I'm actually very happy that we are embarking on such series that myself, I'm also learning a lot. We are also empowering a lot of such knowledge to people who intend to scale and expand into APAC, because it's such a diverse geography.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So as a teaser of our next episode, and thank you everyone for tuning into the webinar. So first of all, on screen, you're going to see a poll come up. Second of all, please help us make the next event better by filling it up. And if you're interested in what we've shared today, if you'd like to speak to any of us, then please contact us. We'd love to have a chat to you. And please join us for the next episode, where I am very, very excited. A good friend of mine and founder of Curate and the master of basically the ecosystem and community in Singapore, Big Bad Jaya, the marathon running machine, Prahlad, is going to be coming in. For those who are familiar with Jaya and have attended the Curate event, we are really looking forward to hearing how, pretty much from someone who wasn't even necessarily in tech sales, created the biggest tech ecosystem, the biggest tech startup ecosystem in Singapore. So we're looking forward to hearing that journey, and thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Right. See you soon.